harsh mood of Puritan iconoclasm rather than prettification. There was to be no idolatry here. Marian and other suspect imagery had been rooted out, gouged from the wood of pew ends, and reredos chipped from stone baptismal fonts. Stained glass survived, as it did here, only because it would be too costly to replace with the clear glass of Puritanism. Behind the church, the main street, a winding affair, was lined mostly by houses joined to one another in the cheek-by-jowl democracy of a variegated terrace. Some of these were built of stone, flinted here and there in patterns, triangles, wavy lines, others of wattle and daub, painted either in cream or in that soft pink which gives to parts of Suffolk its gentle glow. There were a couple of shops and an old pub where a blackboard proclaimed the weekend's fare: hot pot, fish stew, toad in the hole, the stubborn cuisine of England. "That post office," said the driver. "What's happened to it?" The navigator had folded the map and tucked it away in the leather pocket in the side of the passenger door. He looked at his brother and he nodded. "Just beyond the end of the village," said the driver. "It's on the right, just before—" His brother looked at him. "Just before Ingoldsby's farm, remember?" The other man thought. A name came back to him, dredged up from a part of his memory he didn't know he had. "The Aggs," he said. "Mrs. Agg." She'd been waiting for them, they thought, because she opened the door immediately after they rang the bell. She smiled and gestured for them to come in, with the warmth, the eagerness of one who gets few callers. "I just remember this house," the driver said, looking about him. "Not very well, but just. Because when we were boys," and he looked at his brother, "when we were boys we lived here, until I was 12. But you forget." His brother nodded in agreement. "Yes. You know how things look different when you're young. They look much bigger." She laughed. "Because at that age, one is looking at things from down there, looking up. I was taken to see the Houses of Parliament when I was a little girl. I remember thinking that the Tower of Big Ben was quite the biggest thing I had ever seen in my life. And it might have been, I suppose. But when I went back, much later on, it seemed so much smaller. Rather disappointing, in fact." She ushered them through the hall into a sanctum beyond, a drawing-room into which French windows let copious amounts of light. Beyond these windows, an expanse of grass stretched out to a high yew hedge, a dark green backdrop for the herbaceous beds lining the lawn. There was a hedge of lavender, too, grown woody through age. "That was hers," said the woman, pointing to the lavender hedge. "It needs cutting back, but I love it so much I can't bring myself to do it." "La planted that?" "I believe so," said the woman. "We played there," said one of the brothers, looking out into the garden. "It's odd to think that, but we played there for hours and hours, day after day." She left them and went to prepare tea. The brothers stood in front of the window. "What I said about things looking bigger," one said. "One might say the same about a person's life, don't you think? A life may look bigger when you're a child, and then later on, narrower, less impressive? I think so." But the other thought that the opposite might be true, at least on occasion. "A friend told me about a teacher at school," he said. "He was a very shy man, timid, ineffectual, and the children mocked him. You know how quick they are to scent blood in the water. Then, later on, when he met him as an adult, he found out that this same teacher had been a well-known mountaineer, and a difficult route had been named after him." "And La's life?" "I suspect it was a very big one. A very big life led here. In this out-of-the-way place. Yes, in this sleepy little village." He paused. "I suspect that our La was a real heroine." Their hostess had come back into the room, carrying a tray. She put it down on a table and gestured to the circle of chintzy sofa and chairs. She had